Good evening and welcome to Other Voices, brought to you by Peninsula Peace and Justice Center. I'm your host, Paul George. When the national legislature has been taken over by lunatics, we need to turn to the states and other local jurisdictions to actually move forward some socially progressive legislation. And the lunatics are in charge of the asylum in Washington these days. But the good news is there's a lot of good legislation up in Sacramento with the California legislature right now. And we have several guests today to talk about some of the most exciting bills that are there. They're not law yet. That's where you're going to come in with what you learned tonight. So let me welcome several guests to Other Voices this month. And I'm going to start at the far end of the table. First is Elizabeth Aultman. She's a registered nurse and a patient advocate and an activist with the Healthy California campaign. And she's here to tell us about SB 562, the Healthy California Act. Elizabeth, thank you for coming down.
Thank you.
Okay, and next to Elizabeth is Tessa D'Arcangelo. She's the Leadership Development Manager and Organizer with the ACLU of Northern California. And she's here to talk about SB 21, the Police Surveillance Transparency Act. Tessa, welcome to Other Voices.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming down. And sitting right to my right is Laura Casas. She's the Vice President of the Day Worker Center of Mountain View. We've had Maria Marroquin of the Day Worker Center on this program a couple of times. And Laura is also President of the Foothill-De Anza Community College Board of Directors. And Laura is here to talk about SB 54, the California Values Act. Laura, welcome to you, and thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
And filling in for Maria, who discovered she couldn't make it at the last minute. Let me start with you, Laura.
Absolutely.
SB 54, the California Values Act. Let me start with terminology. I try to describe this shorthand to people as kind of a sanctuary state.
Well,
So,
when you say sanctuary, they understand, but it really isn't.
It's not.
It's not.
So let's get into it. What's in this bill? What are the elements of the California Values
Well,
Act?
basically, the bill is in response to the executive order of President Trump. When he came on board, he threw out an executive order that he wouldn't fund, there would be no federal funding for if there's sanctuary cities.
Yeah.
The problem is, he didn't define sanctuary cities,
And
and
no
no one
one
knows.
has, yeah.
Now, what the Values Act is if we don't, well, the taxpayer of California shouldn't have to pay for being the arm of immigration to deport families.
That's a federal responsibility.
That's a federal responsibility. But also, it also creates safe zones so that immigrants can go to school, churches, courthouses, the hospital, and not have to worry about being questioned about their immigration status. Now, what's terrible about this executive order and about the Trump administration is when Obama took office, Obama did do deportations, but you had to be a serious felon or a convicted felon. With the Obama administration, you don't even have to be convicted.
With the Trump administration.
I mean, what did I say?
You said went back to Obama.
No,
a lot of people want to go back to Obama.
Yeah. Well, okay, so no, with the Trump administration, there's no due process. It's if you might have a bad act in your past, and then all of a sudden you're being deported.
Yeah.
So.
Well, this is a good point. Was it true that during the Obama administration, I understand he set deportation records, right?
Yes.
Was it true, though, that the people getting deported really had felony convictions on their record? I look at some of the stories now of people who are being deported, and they had a speeding ticket 10 years ago.
Okay, so this is a situation with having a felony or a bad act. It's hard to describe because let's say you have a speeding ticket or you failed to fix a ticket on your car or something like that, and then you decided not to go to court because you're afraid of going to the courthouse because you're undocumented, then that ticket turns into a misdemeanor, and if you don't show it might turn into a felony.
Yeah.
So even though you really weren't a horrible, serious felon,
A bad hombre.
a bad hombre, it looks that way.
Yeah.
And this is hard too with our students at community college, because we have a lot of students. I know Obama had these deportations of serious bad acts,
Yeah.
but he also, it was a courageous thing. He passed the DACA, deferred action for our students. And I think took tremendous courage.
Yeah, I do want to talk to you about DACA, but let's
Yeah,
stay
no,
on
no, we can
SB
stay.
54.
Yeah, I know,
for
but
right
just
now.
see, we're talking
Yeah.
about Obama and the
Yeah.
heavy deportation. The deportations under Trump have exceeded the scope of what Obama did in
Yeah.
his administration, and it does violate some due process. And really, all the courts have responded to a lot of the executive orders being unconstitutional.
Yeah.
So, anyways.
So how does SB 54 particularly address this?
Okay.
What does it do?
So SB 54 says, okay, you want to do immigration law, don't have our local resources use our very precious resources to break up families. Go to fight crime, find the burglars, find the people that are actually committing crime, and use those resources. That's what the police want to do. The local police use
Right.
our resources not to be the arm of immigration.
So when you say don't use local resources, are you talking about just police personnel, or are you talking about California databases, like criminal databases, where some of this information would be there?
It would include databases.
Include
Databases,
so it
but
would deny the federal
the
government.
exception,
Okay.
and there's some privacy issues there, but the exception to all of this, if there is a convicted, a judicial warrant for arrest. So that you have to go through the courts and get an actual warrant, and that's the exception.
Right.
So if there is a dangerous bad hombre or female, bad
Yeah.
woman, whatever, there is a path there that you want to not give these people, or at least the federal government has an opportunity to evaluate these people.
Right. So that brings up something that I think a lot of people don't understand with this interface between local police and ICE, the Immigrations and Customs Enforcement, is that what's in controversy under all these quote-unquote sanctuary resolutions in cities or states or whatever is that ICE will learn of someone being arrested, put them through their database, as I understand it, and then call the local police and say, please hold them for us till we can get somebody there. And it could be a couple of days. In the meantime, the person has paid their bail and they're out in jail. And the local police no longer have any constitutional right to hold that person.
Well, that was an amendment to SB 54 that you have to give immigration 60, there has to be a 60-day notice. So there is that was an amendment, so you get more support. So if you give notice, a 60-day notice, you could inform immigration.
60-day notice.
60-day notice.
Okay. So now this will apply to all jurisdictions so that...
It's for the state of California. It'll apply to school districts, we have
Local police
security.
support.
We have security at the college. We don't want our students to worry about when they go to class. I mean, these kids want to learn. They want to be part of the economy, and I have to say, as being part of the president of the board, the day Trump was elected, there was a tremendous crisis in our colleges. We had to provide counselors, and our counselors needed counseling. People were devastated,
Yeah.
and it wasn't just people who were undocumented. It was people of color. What does this mean to in our society? I mean, it was almost like we felt we were living in a police state.
Yeah.
And it was and it wasn't just us, but Foothill-De Anza provided resolution to not cooperate with immigration. The city of Mountain View, the county of Santa Clara, and so you have all these local people doing what SB 54 wants to do statewide. And really, if it would be great if California, we just passed the environmental bill yesterday, signed by the governor. Well, it would be great if we could be an example to the rest of the nation on this very issue. And the state of California could be the background, and all of us can say, well, this is now a state law. That would
Yes.
send a great message to the rest of the country.
Absolutely. That's why it's one of the featured pieces of legislation on the program tonight. I think it's really important. But what I wanted to get clear about was, say there's some activists in Sunnyvale right now who are working to get their local city council to pass an ordinance like some of the cities have done. If SB 54 passes in the California legislature, the Sunnyvale City Council doesn't have to do that now, right? Is it covered?
Well, I think you have to see the wording, because in Foothill-De Anza, I mean, a lot of different counties have different wording on how they. Not everyone has one paper that.
It's a real hodgepodge.
No, it's a hodgepodge, and in our college, it has to be a convicted. It has to be a warrant, and it has to be of a convicted. A person has to have been convicted, or so we really. I mean, you have to see what county, what they pass, and how strict it is. The Santa Clara County won't cooperate, even if there is anything.
Right, and in fact, is suing the federal government.
They did sue and won.
Jump a second, Tessa. ACLU has been tracking SB 54. Is it on your radar at all, or do you have?
It's on my radar a little bit. Yeah. I'm aware of what's going on with the bill. Yeah.
Can you describe how it covers local jurisdictions?
So my understanding is that the bill as currently written would not make it so that a city or county couldn't pass something stronger, like Santa Clara County. Okay. In fact, Santa Clara County is often at the vanguard of passing really incredible policies, and often is the example that lawmakers hold up when they decide to make sure that a bill does not override what's happening at the local level, because Santa Clara has done something beyond what they're doing at the state level.
That's going to come up when we talk about SB 21, as a matter of fact.
We're the leaders, absolutely.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Santa Clara County does not get enough credit for how progressive its policies are.
All right. So this has already passed some committees, and it's passed the Senate, right?
It's passed the Senate. It's passed the Judiciary and the Public Policy, Public Safety Committee, and it's out in appropriations. The Assembly has gone, well, they've gone in recess, and after recess it may come up for a vote and then go to the governor.
So it's done in committees in the Assembly?
Right now it's in committee and appropriations.
It will be a full appropriations and then the full Assembly.
The full, and then after that it goes to the governor.
So people who are here in the studio audience or watching this online, what can they do? What's the best thing they can do to support this?
I think
SB?
Call your local assembly and your local your governor.
Yeah, because he's going to have to sign it.
It's already passed the Senate, so talk to your assembly member.
Did it pass on strict party lines in the Senate? Do you know what the vote broke? How
the vote was 27 to 12. 27 to 12. Okay. I would say it was party lines. Party lines.
I don't know the breakdown exactly.
Yeah. Well, there's a supermajority on the Senate side.
Yeah.
But the other aspect of that I really want to tell your listeners here is immigrants are so fearful, and a lot of just walking down the street. And we're so fortunate to live in California because most of our local, the city of Mountain View, the police of Mountain View, all the local jurisdictions have passed resolutions saying we're not going to cooperate. So I feel we need to. If you have cousins in the Central Valley or people other outside of our district, we pretty much have the support of our local elected officials. But don't still remind them. There's going to be a lot of pressure from the other side in the coming weeks. So we really need to just continue focusing. But the other aspect of that I want people to know SB 54 is people keep saying, well, why don't these are lawbreakers? Why don't they just become legal? The problem is we have a very dysfunctional immigration system, and there is no path to legality. There's caps. There's, for instance, I'm a great example of that. My family immigrated when I was a year old and immigrated legally because my father got some sort of position, and we arranged our immigration papers in 1 month.
Huh.
My same exact facts today, people can wait 15 to 20 years on a waiting list, depending on what country you're from, what area you're from. So it's very difficult. You know, I went on to college and law school, and you know, when I talk to the students who are dreamers, and you know, well, Laura, how did you do it? And I just said, you know, the immigration system really sucks. You know. And that's one, I think we can talk about SB 54 as sort of like an example of the rest of the nation, but what we really need to do is comprehensive immigration reform. We really need to do that. And that's really what we need to have people not live in fear. We need to have productive citizens, and we do have, you know, 11 million people are not all criminals.
Yeah. And immigration reform is one thing that is not going to happen in the California legislature.
And that's why we need, SB 54
to
reduce
show the way,
fear and show the way to the rest of the nation, like Santa Clara County continually does, and California does in products liability and other. You know, we're always in the forefront. So let's show the rest of the nation where we stand, that we are a civil society, a constitutional society.
Okay. Before I go on to the next bill, are there any more lobby days or anything on SB 54 where everybody goes up to Sacramento? And
I think they're in recess right now.
Yeah.
I think it's a good time for your local legislators.
Call the local office.
But also call your cousins who live in areas that are not.
Yes.
Like I have, my brother lives in an area. You know, get out there. You know, that's what's really going to help.
And does he do it?
Well, we try. He loves watching the news, but it's getting them to actually talk to their legislator and say, you know, I really want you to support this position.
We'll send him a copy of this too. Okay. And for those of you who are here, I'm going to hold questions till we've gone through all three. So if you have a question in particular for Laura, hold on to it, remember it, and we'll come back and get you involved. So let's move on to SB 21, and again, this is Tessa D'Arcangelo, an organizer with ACLU of Northern California. Police Surveillance Transparency.
Yes.
What is that?
So to answer that question, I think we should actually go back to 2014.
Okay.
I promise it won't be a long story.
Okay.
In 2014, the ACLU of California released a report called Making Smart Decisions About Surveillance. And in releasing that report, we did a ton of research into what is the state of surveillance in the state of California, what's happening at the local level with our law enforcement and their access to surveillance technologies. And what we found is that there's been this significant increase in the past 10 years in local law enforcement accessing increasingly high-powered surveillance technologies such as stingrays, which essentially mimic a cell phone tower, so that instead of your data going to the cell phone tower, it's going to this black box where that data can be captured. And there's been recent reports that ICE is using stingrays in finding people and deporting them. So,
and just to make it clear for people who aren't familiar with this is a very small device that fits in a police car, right?
It's like a suitcase. It's a, you know, a briefcase that you can just toss in the seat of your car, and suddenly within that radius there is a different kind of tool gathering up your data. There's a ton of tools like this. They're getting smaller, they're getting cheaper, they're getting easier to use, and so it's a lot easier for law enforcement to get access to these tools. A lot of times they get access to them through federal grant processes, largely from the Department of Homeland Security. In our report from 2014, we found that of the 180 surveillance programs that existed then, there's certainly many more now today.
How many?
180 in the state of California.
And that was just local jurisdictions?
Just local, yeah. 40% of those had been paid for by federal grants, and the others, they were paid for by asset forfeiture that happened in Calexico, where they used the money from asset forfeiture to buy technologies, and then they actually used that to spy on city council. They have gotten access to those tools through, I know.
Sounds like a show all on its own.
Yeah, they've gotten access to those tools through private foundations that think they're a good idea, wealthy citizens that decide that they want to set up surveillance against their neighbors, and they involve the police in that. So it's a real problem. And with this proliferation of surveillance technology came a proliferation of bad public policy, where virtually none of the city councils or boards of supervisors had done really any cost-benefit analysis. They kind of just rubber-stamped things. Oftentimes, they didn't even realize that they had voted for something. That happened in San Jose, where through this report, we found out that San Jose PD had a drone, and the city council basically said, "Ooh, my bad. I did not realize I voted for that," because it was so embedded in a consent calendar item for city council.
Wow.
Oh,
So
watch that.
a real problem on our hands. And so the ACLU wrote a model ordinance, and Santa Clara County was the very first local jurisdiction to pass that ordinance. They passed it in 2016. Organizations like Oakland Privacy, Media Alliance, the Peace and Justice Center, both the Peninsula and the San Jose Peace and Justice Center, Asian Law Alliance were very instrumental in getting that ordinance passed. And essentially what the ordinance does is 4 things. First, it ensures that there's a public debate before seeking the technology, because too often law enforcement or other government agencies are told, hey, this will solve all your problems. And they don't really dig into what is this tool, what is the problem we're trying to solve here? Is this really going to solve our problem? Is it going to create other problems? And there was no opportunity for the public to weigh in and raise really valid concerns about these technologies.
Especially if they're being given the equipment.
Right.
It's like, well, let's get it and then we'll figure out what to do with it.
Right. And it becomes a real community trust issue.
Yeah.
One of the most stark examples was in Fresno, where a group of Fresno activists had been very involved with the Fresno Police Department in trying to get them to adopt community policing techniques, rebuild community trust, work towards a shared vision of what safety should be in Fresno. And they realized that during that same time that they were trying to work with the police department, the police department was using a surveillance technology that combed social media profiles and basically was assigning them threat levels because of their use of hashtags like hands up, don't shoot, I can't breathe, Black Lives Matter. So quite ironic that they're working towards police reform while they're being watched by the very police that they were trying to work with.
Wow.
So there's a lot of unintended consequences of not really considering fully these technologies before you purchase them. So that's the first thing that the ordinance does. The second thing that the ordinance does is it requires that our local lawmakers actually vote to approve these technologies and whether or not budgets should be going towards these technologies, or say towards our schools, or improving our park systems, or whatever other important resource needs are in the community. And if the community has come out strongly against the technology and our elected officials go ahead with it anyway, well, we have a chance at the ballot box to hold them accountable for that, because so far this has been done above table instead of below, as has been currently happening.
So by requiring a public debate and vote, the public gets better notice that this is being considered for acquisition.
Right.
And a chance to say, this is something we don't want.
Exactly.
And tell their city council representatives.
Exactly.
Vote no, or I'm voting for somebody else
Right,
next time.
right.
Yeah.
And it's basic transparency. It's a basic piece of our democracy that just doesn't exist right now when it comes to surveillance technology.
Yeah, and you're not telling police departments, no, you can't have this, or you can't. How does it deal with, and Santa Clara County, again, was the vanguard in this. They passed one, it's the first one in the nation, correct?
Right.
Like this. How did Santa Clara County or SB 21 deal with the fact that there are surveillance technologies out there that we don't know about yet that will be invented next month?
So that's what's really incredible, I think, about this ordinance and SB 21 is that it defines surveillance technology broadly enough to encompass future technologies and is essentially future-proof. But it doesn't define it so broadly that then anytime they want to download a new version of Firefox on their city computers, they have to go through this process.
Yeah, good. And I want to ask about the impact locally as well, like I was doing with SB 54, because there are some efforts in local communities. You mentioned Oakland. Here in Palo Alto, you and I have been working on an ordinance at City Council that may finally get voted on after almost 2 years of working on it come this fall. Will the state one apply to cities that haven't passed this ordinance so that we don't have to go through this 2-year process in Mountain View or something like that?
Right. So you're pointing to something that I think is really important about SB 21, which is that anyone who's worked towards an ordinance at the city or county level knows that it's a very long time. It's usually 2+ years to get an ordinance passed.
Yes.
And so SB 21 applies a basic standard of what the ordinance should look like to all cities and counties. SB 21 takes most of the pieces of the ordinance, which are the transparency pieces that we talked about, and then also a piece making sure that lawmakers are also passing a use policy so that if they do decide to move forward, that use policy makes sure they move forward in the narrow way that they've defined to actually solve the problem they're trying to solve. And then lastly, it requires basic reporting so that there's oversight and an understanding of how these technologies have been used.
So annual reports back to the city council.
Exactly.
On the use policy, does that include defining ahead of time who gets access to the data that's grabbed and how it's secured and kept secure?
Yeah, the data piece is a really big part of this. The best way to guard against hackers or bad actors that are going to get access to all the data that's being swept into these systems is just to not keep the data in the first place, not collect it.
Yeah.
So a good use policy should have a retention piece to it. It should have restrictions on who can access it, how it can be accessed. It should be stored in a very secure system. So there's a lot of different pieces of the use policy. There's also pieces of the use policy that should really look at who's going to be impacted by this. Because when we're not thinking about that, what we don't realize is that these high-powered tools are basically augmenting the inequities and disparities that already exist in our communities.
Yeah.
So they get pointed at the communities of color, the immigrant communities, the low-income communities, the homeless. And those people who are already over-criminalized and overwatched by the police, that just gets ramped up very quickly with these technologies.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. I want to stay on the importance of who gets access to the data, because you were mentioning some of the technologies ahead at the outset and some of the Homeland Security providing some of these. But one of the most incredible stories, I think Electronic Frontier Foundation dug this up, was these automated license plate readers, which go in police cars and they can identify a license plate and run the tag, so to speak, to find. They found that some manufacturers were providing these for free to police departments, and the price was that the manufacturer got access to the data, and they in turn were selling it to bill collection agencies.
Right.
This is why we need things like SB 21 and these transparent. Yeah, isn't that amazing? It's a stunning story.
Yeah, it's interesting. Before the election, when people would hear about the issues I worked on, they would only hear privacy, privacy, and I think a lot of people, I'd watch them kind of zone out and think, oh, privacy, so paranoid, the government's fine, they're just doing good things. And after the election, there has been a sudden shift in how people trust their government.
Well, yeah.
And so suddenly they're very concerned. And they should be concerned because of the issue with government accountability and government overreach. the erosion of our rights and how quickly we've seen how that can become very scary in the wrong hands. But these aren't and never have been simply privacy issues. They're equity issues, they're economic justice issues like the ALPRs, they're impact and racial justice issues. And also these tools are being used against activists. That is one of the largest populations that faces these tools, is police showing up to protests and using these to really track activists and understand who's there and start to monitor them very closely. And so especially now, these tools are things that we need to be very wary of and careful with.
So what's the status of SB 21?
So SB 21 is going to go to Appropriations Committee. It'll be its final committee after the summer recess, so sometime in the last 2 weeks of August. And it's been quite a roller coaster with SB 21. When it was first introduced, it had very minimal pieces of the overall ordinance passed in Santa Clara County and moving forward in other places. It really was just transparency without all of the other process and use policies and oversight. It has leaped forward, and
I think we should mention, given what district we're in,
Yes.
who wrote it.
Senator Hill wrote
right,
it.
Jerry Hill.
Jerry Hill.
He's written a lot of privacy and surveillance legislation over the
Good.
years.
Was he inspired by Santa Clara's ordinance?
So I think that's a good point. I really love seeing how what happens at the local level, including actually a lot of the immigration bills that we've seen in California, they start at the local level. They start with activists and community groups coming together and working with their local lawmakers to create a solution that's often really creative, and lawmakers pick up on that and they bring it to the state level, and then we get things like SB 21. So SB 21 is going to head to Appropriations Committee. It's a really important committee for the bill. We want to make sure
It's in the Assembly.
it's in the Assembly side.
It's passed the Senate.
Yep.
Good.
So it starts SB, so it started in the Senate, and now it's on the Assembly side, and it will go to that committee in the end of August. We need it to get out of that committee basically as is already. It exempts sheriffs and DAs essentially from these mechanisms, so we want to make sure that that exemption doesn't get carried over to local law enforcement and police departments. And then hopefully it gets a vote on the floor and goes to the governor's desk, and at that point we hope to work with a lot of communities throughout California to take what was passed at the state level and build upon it to put something even stronger into place at the local level.
It may very well help the local level, so that instead of a 2-year process like we've been through with Palo Alto.
Well, there's hundreds of cities in California, so multiply that times 2 or 3, and I'd be an old lady by then.
What's the and your license plate would have shown up in a lot of police department license plate readings. What's the best thing that individual activists can do to help support this bill? Do you have any lobby days coming up in Sacramento on it or anything?
We don't have a lobby day. However, during the summer recess, we are going to, August 1st, we're going to have a webinar that we'll be hosting where we will teach people kind of the nitty-gritty about the legislative process in California politics. And then we'll be talking about a number of our bills, and then we will put people into teams and actually have them go do in-district lobby visits that we're going to support during that summer recess. So teaching people how to be constituent lobbyists, putting them together with other people so that they get a little bit more courage in that group, especially for people who've never done that before. And SB 21 will be a bill that there will be a few teams that will have them working on that. SB 54 will be another bill that will be featuring for that. So it's sort of an in-district lobby day.
Great. And of course, people should phone their own.
Yes, phone your
assembly
lawmaker.
member.
If you know people in San Diego, in Assemblymember Gonzalez Fletcher's district, you should have all of your friends and family call her. She is a key target she's chair of the Appropriations, which is a very powerful position. So we want her to hear that this is an issue people care about.
All right. Well, thank you very much, and let's hope that SB 21 gets passed, we were talking about setting precedents that first at the local level and then it gets passed as state law and then becomes national law.
Right.
So if SB 54 turns into immigration reform, let's hope SB 21 outlaws the NSA or something. Maybe. Okay, last but certainly not least, there's a reason, Laura, I left SB 562 to the end, because it's probably one of the most complex, and it's also in the most trouble up in Sacramento, I think. So, or Elizabeth, I'm sorry, I said Laura, I think. SB, and again, this is Elizabeth Aultman of a registered nurse and patient advocate and an activist with the Healthy California campaign. And SB 562 is called the Healthy California Act. And give us the overview of the Healthy California Act.
Well, honestly, I don't think that it's the most complicated. I think that it's
Politically, I think.
due to the opposition.
Yeah.
But it's so something that is a right to everyone that we should not even be questioning. It would just provide everyone in California eligibility to go to the doctor and not worry about having to pay a copay and get the treatment that they deserve. Simple as that. It actually would be less.
I think we had a mic problem here.
Okay. Well, it would. Just to clear it up, this has been something that we've been fighting for not myself, because I haven't been alive for as long as we've been fighting for this.
Single payer, yes.
Right.
It's clearly understood, but by the people who are fighting for it, but has been totally mutated by media and governments and insurance companies and pharmaceutical companies to make it appear as though it could be some form of a threat when it's actually the opposite of that. You know, it's just care. You know, people are feel that it might be the government's coming to take over their care. Well, this SB 562 is actually getting rid of the real middleman who is getting in the way of you and your physician. And
insurance companies.
Yes. And it's getting rid of the companies who actually profit from denying us care. You know, and
So
I almost rather the government be in the middle than somebody who really just wants to deny care to patients who need and deserve it.
So it's a single-payer healthcare system for California. Would everybody living in California qualify?
Yes, everyone. And just to clarify, I'm not saying, I want to make it very clear that the government would not be involved at all in the decision-making process. It is strictly between you and your physician, and whatever your physician feels that you need is covered. And you get to choose who you go to.
So this bill, I think we should be upfront about it, has recently gotten pulled by the Speaker of the Assembly, correct? After passing the Senate?
Yes. It passed with large majority vote, and it's Anthony Rendon, who it's just on hold tomorrow. I mean, anytime he could change his mind. As mentioned, we have a supermajority right now. They could go and make a fuss and get it out there in the media, and it could be turned around. It's not as much of a brick wall as it seems to be. You know, we can be active, and we can show that this is what the people want. You know, polls have shown that people want to be taken care of. People want single payer. People want Medicare for all, and we have the funding, and it's simply a matter of insurance companies and pharmaceutical companies having so much power through campaign donations, just standing in the way of our representatives representing our needs and our desires as citizens.
So let's talk about the finances of it, at least briefly, because this seems to be the constant complaint that's thrown out against any kind of single payers. How do you pay for it? How is California going to pay, for everybody's health care without raising taxes? And so just talk about that a little bit. And
essentially already paid for. All the funding that would go to Medicare, Medi-Cal, would instead go towards Healthy California and cover the majority of it. It would be a small amount that we would need to add in addition to that, and there are small taxes. I don't even want people get upset at the word taxes, but and how it has been set up and through the study, it is with what has been proposed, most everyone is going to be saving money. I think it's like most businesses save money. Only maybe some large corporations would pay slightly more. Any gap would be covered by a tax, or just a receipt tax, but there would also be restrictions on that as far as you can't be taxed out for food, the essentials, utilities, and low incomes people would be able to then get that money back in form of tax return. So the more money you spend on frivolous items, the more you might be contributing to that, but the essentials would not be affected.
I guess one way to ask this question, to try to respond to the critics, is to say if you took all the money that's being spent on healthcare in California right now, and that would include not only payments to doctors and for drugs and things like that, but everybody's insurance premiums every month.
And what's the
and
what we have to pay for
yeah.
people who have to use the ER as primary care?
Yeah.
That
a big cost. So you add that up, and that's one big, huge pile of money. I have no idea what the number might be. But then if you put it through healthcare through a single payer system, the total expenditures are actually less than what we're spending now.
Yes, and for everyone to have care. And just so you know, I fumble a little bit because this is not necessarily my specialty. I'm a nurse.
Yeah.
I take care of patients, and I see what's going on as things stand today.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm so passionate about it.
You are literally
yes.
literally on the front lines.
Yeah. Like you introduced me as a patient advocate. And I have to be an advocate all the time to make sure that people get the care that they deserve. Talking about different races, different people, we're all the same when it comes to our health. As a nurse and we study anatomy, we know that we are all the same.
Yes, we all wear the same open in the back gowns when we're in the hospital.
Unless there's been a scientific discovery, and as there are, and we advance. Typically, if you have a condition, it's going to be treated one way. Unless you don't have insurance, and they might try a few other things first. Yeah. It's amazing.
Okay. Let me, one of your colleagues on the Healthy California campaign is here in our audience, Carolyn Bowden. Do you have an answer about this, the money thing?
Sure.
Yeah, if you could take the handheld and hold it right there, yeah.
Okay. I don't think is it on?
Yeah.
Okay. So it will cost $404 billion to insure everyone, including the uninsured and the underinsured. We already spend $367 billion in the state of California in all ways, whether it's through Medicaid, through CHIP, which is the child health plan, through private insurers. So it would cost around additional $40 billion to cover everyone including the underinsured, which are people that pay high premiums and don't get very good health insurance, have large copays, have large premiums, right? So also, if you figure that 70% of all healthcare dollars spent in the state of California are already public dollars through charity care.
Say that again.
70% of all healthcare dollars spent in the state of California are already public dollars, right?
Yeah.
And that's a study of UCLA last year. August 2016, the UCLA School of Public Policy put that study out. And so if you figure that the insurance companies take anywhere from 15 to 20% off the top, that's the administrative cost for marketing. It's amazing. The other day I was in the BART station. I went to see Summer of Love at the museum in San Francisco, and throughout the entire BART station was advertising for Blue Cross Blue Shield. I don't know how much that costs them, but that is not money that goes to patient care.
Right.
Right?
But
And
it's coming from patients.
But it's coming from you and I when we pay our health insurance premiums, right?
Yeah.
So that's part of the problem is 15 to 18% of monies that go to insurance companies don't go for patient care. They go for marketing, CEO salaries, administrative costs. Medicare has 3%, on average, 3% administrative costs. So if we had a Medicare for all system in the state of California, our administrative costs, there'd be no marketing, there'd be no CEO salaries. Our administrative costs would be down to 3%. So that's where some of the savings come in order to make up for the additional costs, right? And there's, in this bill, in SB 562, there's cost controls. There's ways that the state of California can negotiate to bring down drug prices. Because imagine, I don't know if many of you know about Prop 61 last year. Part of that deal was that we were going to be able to negotiate. The state of California would be able to negotiate drug prices down to 40%, about where the Veterans Administration is. But that was defeated by $130 million spent by the drug companies, right? So there's too much money in medical right now in our healthcare. There's too much money in our healthcare through our pharmaceutical companies and through the insurance companies. So that's some of the answers to the money. I can go into a lot more numbers, but I think people's eyes will glaze over.
Those are the numbers that I wanted to hear, because I know I read that somewhere and I just didn't have them up here. So that's great. Thank you. So I do want to get to our audience and get them involved, but so Speaker Rendon has pulled this bill. What's your campaign now? What are you encouraging individual activists to do? I know you've done a lot of lobby days up there.
Oh yeah. The same. Reach out to the assembly. Have everyone make phone calls. We're making phone calls. We're just educating the public, making it known, and we're going to continue, I'm sure, to have lobby days. And I think there's something coming up in San Jose soon. We'll definitely give that information to you, as well as the website you can go to. The whole financial study is available for viewing. So just stay active, follow us, reach out to Assembly. Yeah.
Okay.
But as a nurse, it's just the right thing to do. We spend so much on healthcare in this country, and we get so little out of it. It's about quality of life. Not having to, in the back of your mind, think, if I got in a car accident, if I don't die, my life still might be over, essentially. You don't ever know when it could happen to any of us. We're all vulnerable, young and old. I've seen them all come in with something completely unexpected. And until that happens to you, I think it's hard to really grasp how important healthcare is, but I see it every day. Just like, I can't believe this happened to me. And it goes into taking care of the undocumented. I actually had a situation where, in many situations, I'm sure happen all the time, people are fearful even going to the hospital.
Right.
Yeah. I had a patient who acted like she knew English and passed for a while until, I
It became apparent.
quickly, until I got on shift and, figured it out.
Yeah. We did a program on the impacts of that, and the not seeking medical care because of immigration
Right. I
enforcement.
mean, preventative
Heartbreaking
medicine
stories.
is so much less expensive than waiting until it has gotten out of control. Like, you know you need to go to the dentist because we all know most dental insurance is just good for really x-rays and to find the problem that you ultimately have to pay for. We don't want to know, you know? So like somebody who knows that they're not covered or they're not covered well enough, if they have an aching in their back, they're going to be like, oh, it's probably fine, because they have to tell themselves that because the idea of the cost is too much to make themselves go and find out that actually that's your kidney. You know, and you know, find out that you have had diabetes and you can take care of it and you can heal that kidney. But if you don't go, then you could end up in kidney failure that's irreversible and then be on dialysis for the rest of your life or until you run out of vessels to use. And that's a huge cost. You know, that's another thing that's not really being considered, is that preventative medicine is much less expensive and provides a better quality of life than waiting until it's an emergency and the cost of that.
So SB 562, the Healthy California Act, kind of in suspense up in Sacramento right now, so call your assembly representative on that one as well. And if it doesn't get brought back in this session, I'm sure it's going to get reintroduced next year.
We brought back.
California especially has been working on this for a long time. Personally, I worked on the single-payer ballot initiative that I think was in 1996, 20 years ago.
Wow.
And we spent $5 million, and the insurance companies spent $50 million to defeat that.
A lot of
and it's still the same story.
People in healthcare have given a lot of thought and information into this. You know, right now businesses run healthcare. You know, and corporations and the pharmaceutical companies. Like, this is based on those who have firsthand knowledge, physicians.
And they are large donors in Sacramento. Let's get the audience in on this. If you have a question or comment you want to make, wait for the microphone to arrive, and Steffi will be coming around. And if you'll stand up and make it a little easier for our camera people.
Yeah, so I think I kind of understand who the opposition is for the SB 562, but for the other two, who's financing the opposition to your bills?
Always a good question. Tessa?
Law enforcement.
They are.
Yeah, law enforcement feels that the more their secrets are revealed, the harder their job will become. We know that's not true because we see plenty of examples where San Jose is actually a great example where the community was very angry about the drone that they got because they did it in secret. They had to go through a public process, and that public process actually revealed that they wanted the drone to look into bomb situations where they didn't want to put people or to find hikers missing in ravines. No one had a problem with that. And so transparency actually helps to build community trust and build towards smarter decisions. So law enforcement is our opposition, but it's not, I think, in their best interest to do so.
We certainly aren't seeing that in Palo Alto, at least
Not yet.
not overtly. Yes, you're expecting it in the fine print in the bill. Is anybody up front opposing SB 54?
Well, I guess your Trump core is definitely against it, but I think your average citizen is concerned as soon as you say, well, this might affect your future federal funding, because Trump says if you have sanctuary policies, we're going to just cut the federal funds. So people are concerned, well, does that mean my city and my state isn't going to get the, and that's, I think, but when you say, and Santa Clara County, when that lawsuit was filed, the orders are so broad and are unconstitutional. How can you deport people who haven't had due process? So when you explain to people, well, wait a second, this violates the Constitution, so it's not, there's going to be a fight, and you got to stand up to fight.
Yeah.
And we live in the United, and we have a Constitution that works for the people, hopefully, and
It's true. That's what you hear. We went to Los Altos with a resolution, very similar sort of thing, and all the people who spoke against it, I think every one of them mentioned that as losing federal funding.
Yeah,
and I don't think Los Altos gets a lot of federal
they don't
funding.
get anything.
Okay, another question. Okay,
Yes. I had one question that had to do with the SB 54 bill, and I had another question that had to do with the SB 562.
okay.
Well, the first question is recently in Hayward, that's where I live, we passed a city ordinance for a sanctuary city so that information will be shared with the law enforcement so we can ensure that those who are undocumented are protected, and information that they share with any local organizations won't be shared with the ICE, so they won't be deported or anything like that if they're law-abiding citizens. The problem that I see is even though that we do these things locally, it seems like there's some people from the federal government who are then working with Trump, and they might be on the left or the right of things, but they still, even their own constituents pass these city ordinance rules, they still go around us and they still are supporting what's happening in the federal government. So it kind of steps on us. So how can we really get around that? For example, I think they just recently passed a bill in the House and the federal government, and our local assemblyman, Swalwell, he supported that bill so that we would
Swalwell's
get.
a congressman, so.
Yeah.
Okay,
He's
so-
He's
federal
staying in
congressman.
Washington.
He supported that bill, so then basically our city funding would be taken away. So that kind of like countered us, and he's supposed to be on our side. So how can we fight against people like that? And for the SB,
Go tell him.
That's right.
Go tell him.
He's
Well,
you're the
He'll
constituent.
be having town halls. Show up
Oh,
at his
yeah.
town halls.
and for the SB 562, I know one of the biggest issues is Prop 98 and Prop 13. Basically, the funding mechanisms and how our state budget is put together. It really affects basically our financing of all of our programs throughout our state. Are those with the Healthy California movement, are they going to work with others to basically go after Prop 13 and Prop 98? And do you think that this is an opportunity to, have Californians, look at, like, if we say that we all
You know
want
what?
everyone to have care.
We are out of time. I'm getting the high sign from camera one. We're going to have to wrap it up. I want to thank, we'll answer your question right after we go off the air. I want to thank Elizabeth, Tessa, and Laura for bringing us a lot of knowledge about a lot of things going there. People, pick up the phone, get a pen, write letters, make phone calls to Sacramento.
So important.
Very important.
Make your voices heard.
Join us next month here on August 1st. We'll have award-winning foreign correspondent Reese Ehrlich back to talk about rising tensions in the Middle East. You've been watching Other Voices, brought to you by Peninsula Peace and Justice Center. Thanks for joining us. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Elizabeth. Good job.